Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shaunna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Well, hello, everyone. We have made it to a very important episode, number 100. Now, listen, I would have told you that you are crazy if you think I'm going to start a podcast and reach 100 episodes. And yet, here we are. I have learned some things along the way, and I thought this would be a really great opportunity for me to share with you all what I have learned getting to this 100th episode. So I've put together a list of 10 things that I have learned that will perhaps be tips for each of you if you are considering perhaps starting your own show. So without further ado, in no particular order, I am going to jump right in. So the first thing that I have learned in the course of doing this super fun show of mine is that audience matters. Now, obviously, I knew when starting a show that in order to have a successful podcast, you need listeners. But that's not quite what I'm talking about. What I am referring to here is knowing your audience and being crystal clear on who they are is what matters. So in any one thing that you do in life, obviously kind of knowing who your audience is kind of an important topic or an important thing to keep in mind. However, when it comes to creating a podcast and all of the different steps in the process of producing a show, knowing who your audience is, it makes everything else easier if you have a real crystal clear view of who you're speaking to in terms of what guests you'll bring on the show, how they will add value to your audience, knowing how you're going to market your show or what you say in social media. Every single aspect of creating and producing a podcast, when you know exactly who your audience is, all the other pieces get easier. And so one of the things that I sort of have learned the hard way, both in writing my book and starting this particular podcast, is not only growing an audience, but knowing where they are. So in order to market to any group of people, you have to know who it is that you're talking to and where they hang out. And so I would just say, learn from my mistakes and really solidify who your audience is before you publish your first episode. Give it some thought. It will make every other step in the process easier. So my second lesson learned is don't sweat the small stuff. We know this concept of don't sweat the small stuff. There's even a book with that title. It's a great book, by the way. Good read. And some really solid advice. But when it comes to a podcast specifically, taking on this sort of an endeavor, for a lot of people, the details will keep them from moving forward. What microphone do I need to use? What sort of equipment should I be sourcing? What software should I use to record my episodes? How do I interview my guests? Are they virtual? Is it in person? Any one of these questions can send you down a spiral of researching and not actually moving forward with the show. So my advice to not sweat the small stuff is quite literally, you can start a podcast recording into your phone. So I actually learned everything that I learned in terms of how to create this podcast and kind of get the ball rolling to get the process started. I learned from Jenna Kutcher. I am so anxious and ready for her to have an affiliate link so that I can start pointing everybody to her and, love those affiliate links to get a little kickback. But I learned from her what ultimately gave me the courage and confidence to get started. And that was just that you need to start recording and that it didn't matter what microphone you used. And now listen, there's going to be some sound snobs out there who will disagree with me. That's okay. What I'm going to tell you is it is much more important what you have to say and who you're saying it to. And it's way less important what equipment you're using to record your voice. So get started and then figure it out as you go. You will be able to kind of test out equipment and different software, and it just is easier if you have something to work with. And once you get some experience, you'll learn a little bit and then you'll discover what is important to you and what is not important to you. When I was taking the podcast lab with Jenna Kutcher, she said that she literally started her podcast recording on her phone, sitting in her car in her garage. Now, listen, that's some good acoustics. If you need just a quiet place to record, like inside your car, inside your garage is pretty well insulated. So, not a bad move, actually. And what that told me when I heard that was that it didn't matter what microphone I used. And listen, there are some really pricey equipment out there, and then there's some really solid ones for not a lot of money. So, it doesn't matter what microphone you use in the very beginning. What does matter is that you hit record and you get started. And that actually is my third lesson learned. Like Nike says, just do it. So my lesson was just get started. Once you start the process and get the ball rolling, you will build your confidence. You will learn a little bit. Things will get easier. You'll discover there's new things that were hard that you didn't even know to be concerned about. The momentum needs to begin so that you have something to work with. And I will tell you, one of the really specific tactical suggestions I was given was that when you first launch your podcast, you want to make sure that you have 4 to 6 episodes recorded and publish them all at one time. The strategy behind that is that you want people to have another couple episodes to listen to if they like the first or second one. You want to give them some options to kind of bounce around. A podcast is not like a book where you're reading front to back. A podcast, each episode can be a standalone, entry, if you will. And so you want people to have enough content to consume and to binge if they like it. Like that's the goal, is that someone is hitting play on one of your episodes and they pop right into the next one. So you want to have a good handful when you first launch your show. And then that gives you that bingeable content to work with. Because listen, as you start recording, you're going to create the content there that people can bounce around and binge on. But in the very beginning, you need a couple episodes. So this advice that I'm giving you from my lesson learned to just start it already is really just to start recording, because once you record one episode, you can decide whether or not it's good and you keep it, or if you're recording a next one. Like the idea here is just to start recording your conversations, whether that's by yourself or with another person that you're interviewing, and just start the ball rolling. I will tell you that I sat in that phase of, I want to start a podcast, but I'm not quite sure what equipment I need, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to talk about, and I don't really know who I'm talking to. And I sat in that space for well over a year before I finally said, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And what I can tell you after getting to this 100th episode is I have learned more in the process of recording with all of my guests and by myself through all of those episodes than I did in that phase of trying to gather a bunch of information before I get started. So that's where just started already is my little tidbit piece of advice. Okay, so then the fourth thing that I learned is to pick a cadence. Now, this was advice that was given to me that I wholeheartedly agree with, but I'm going to tell you this with a caveat, and that is actually number 8 on my list as well. And that is that you can always change your mind. So, this pick a cadence concept, give some thought to how often you think you're going to be able to record. Will you record in batches where you are sitting down to record in, the course of a couple hours, several different episodes, and then you can just have the episodes to roll out as you need to? Or are you just going to record once a week with your guests and publish once a week? Give some thought to, and this is going to take a little practice. As you are recording, as you are editing, as you are publishing, you'll get a sense of how much is involved with each episode and then how much time and effort you have to devote each week. And so that's where the cadence comes into play. What is more important is that you're consistently providing content, and it's less important how often it is or how long each episode is. You just want to have a regular cadence so your audience knows when to expect the next episode. So they are not kind of sitting and waiting. The worst thing that could happen is if you provide some really great content, everyone loves the episodes, and then you go 2-3 weeks without launching another episode and they don't know when the next one is happening and you kind of have fallen off their radar. So pick a cadence, stick with it. And then obviously you can always change your mind. Like I have very much been a living example of this, kind of figuring out what the cadence was going to be. I initially started with once a week, then I tried to go to twice a week. That's a lot. And then I rolled back to once a week. And what I'm doing now is making sure that each of my guests consistently, those episodes are coming out every Thursday. And then I pop in with my solo episodes as I see fit, as I feel called. And so that to me has felt really good and easy and manageable. And so I have the regular weekly cadence built in, and then I have bonus episodes, which are the solo episodes here and there as I desire. So, anyways, pick a cadence. You can always change your mind, but have some sort of consistent rhythm to the show so that your audience knows when to expect the next episode. Now, number 5. This was actually one of my biggest fears when I started a show and I was committing to regularly interviewing guests. And this was that I was afraid I was going to run out of people to talk to. And quite honestly, there was a period in time when I did run out of guests and there was nobody else scheduled for me to talk to. And here's what I'm going to tell you. You figure it out. And I've actually found a really great resource, which I will link in this episode show notes for you, because I do have an affiliate link for Podmatch. And that has been like a dating matching service for podcast hosts and guests. I have been so super pleased with this service. I now have a new problem, which is a good problem to have. I have more people requesting to be on the show than I have time to record or time on the calendar, the content calendar to actually publish those episodes. So now I get to pick and choose who I think is the best fit for my audience. And that is the lesson. You will not run out of people to talk to, but keep your audience in mind and know specifically who it is that you're looking for. It'll make choosing guests easier. And I promise you, you will not run out of people to talk to. Now, the other fear that I had when it came to these solo episodes, I was afraid that this is going to sound funny to you guys. I was afraid I was going to run out of things to talk about. I will never run out of things to talk about. Let's be clear. But this was really one of those kind of imposter syndrome fears that was just keeping me stuck in the I don't know what to do kind of before I started the podcast moment. And so I will just say, you are not ever going to run out of things to talk about. And here are some of the things that I do. inevitably, I will think of a great topic for either a podcast episode or a blog entry, which a lot of the times serve as both for me. So I will use the transcript from a podcast to create a blog, and then I have both pieces of content, written and audio, available for my audience. People learn differently. They want to hear and consume things different. But as I come up with those ideas, and usually it's when I'm in the shower, I have a running list of topics that come up, and I just write them down as I come up with them. So keeping this list ongoing, once you just started writing these down and kind of keeping track of them, you're going to realize how quickly that list is filling up and how long it will actually take you to record all of those episodes. So you are not going to run out of things to talk about, especially if the topic of your show is something that you feel so passionate about and you love to talk about. There's always going to be a nuance. Like, listen, how many episodes have I done just on self-care alone? And it comes up in so many different conversations with my guests in so many different ways, and yet it's the same topic. So you will always have something to talk about. Okay, so number 7. This is one of my favorite things to tell myself as well as my kids and my friends. You can do hard things. So, for me specifically, that was the learning curve when it came to producing a podcast. I had no idea how to edit audio. I had no idea how to publish an episode or to work with the software. And I've tried out a few different ones at this point, to be honest. And through the trial and error, you learn. And you can do hard things. You can learn how to do the things you don't know how to do. So when it comes to editing a podcast or producing the show and everything that comes along with that, you can learn how to do it. You can do hard things. And for me, this was less of a lesson and more of just validating what I already know to be true. But it was also like, put your money where your mouth is and do the thing that you've told other people to do, Shauna. And so I did have that lesson validated for me time and time again with this podcast. And while it does feel amazing to say, yes, I know how to do all these things now, there will come a point in time when I get to delegate and pay someone else to do them as well. So you can do hard things. If I can do it, you can do it. Number 8, I already alluded to a minute ago, but just keep in the back of your mind, you can always change your mind. So I just talked about this recently with one of my guests that I have interviewed, but I have not published for you yet. In that conversation, we talked about this very thing, that you can always change your mind. And there have been many times where I have decided, you know what? This is my show. I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. I can change the cadence. If I have said episodes published on a Thursday morning and life got in the way and I can't do it until Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, that's okay. Like, it's all right. And so I think that the flexibility that we have with our own projects is amazing. Nothing is being dictated for you. There are guidelines that you can set for yourself. There's a cadence that you can stick to, but you can always change your mind. If you decide that once a month episodes are more your jam, then do that. And if you get started and decide, I really don't love interviewing people, I think I'm just going to talk up all myself, also okay. So just know that you can always change your mind. Number 9, this is one of my favorite things to remind other people of, and one of the hardest things for me to do personally. So one of the lessons that I have learned along the road to 100 episodes is to get help. And for me, it's more accept help, but it is very, very important to recognize that when you are starting any project, it doesn't matter what the project is, how big or small it is, we are not meant to do life alone. And so Get help. Ask friends to help you. One of my favorite ways to kind of get a podcast off the ground and running is to partner up with someone and co host it together. It is so much easier if you've got somebody else holding you accountable, helping you learn the hard things, being able to delegate the workload, being able to partner up with someone to do a show together might be a really great way to just get you started. So you may remember that for a short period of time was doing a podcast with my friend Jamie, and really that was the intent, was that I was helping her get her podcast off the ground and running. And we had lots of fun, and it went on for probably longer than I anticipated that it would. But at this point, I've set the birdie free. And so she is now hosting that show on her own, and she'll just bring in co-host as she needs. And so it was a really wonderful way to get her started in podcasting so she could learn and I could kind of teach her what I had learned and kind of get it started for her. And then it's really easy to take my name off and take my picture off the cover. And she has a show that's already, a well-oiled machine. So get help, partner up, delegate. Feel free to ask your kids to jump in and help you. Listen, these young people are really great at social media and videos. And I've had my kids help me with some of the editing features. It's been really a great learning opportunity for all of us. And it's been really cool to have my kids be a little more invested in something that I'm doing and to be supportive. So don't forget to pull in your kids and delegate as you need to, but get help. And also I will say if it's just even learning something new, get someone to teach you. So it is not an endeavor that you're supposed to know how to do every single thing by yourself. So get help in whatever way that means for you. And then number 10, listen, this was a great lesson for me. Be a guest on other podcasts. Now, it was not quite as intuitive as now it is. Now it feels like it totally makes sense. But in the beginning, it didn't quite make sense how that would be valuable to me. So obviously, I had heard by being a guest on other podcasts, that was a great way to introduce myself to other audiences and kind of grow my audience. So it was a great strategy for audience growth specifically. However, I did not anticipate that I would learn so much from other podcast hosts simply by being a guest on their show. It gave me so much valuable information in terms of how I can better prepare my guests, how I can maybe interview slightly differently. It gave me all sorts of new information to then pick and choose from how I was going to do my show based on being a guest on other people's, just how they market their podcast or the questions they ask. A lot of the behind the scenes process to kind of onboarding a guest. Since everybody's show is different, every host has a different process. So being able to kind of watch how other people were doing it allowed me to make sure that I was providing all the information up front that my guests would need. Something as simple as just reminding them to turn off their notifications on their computer. It was something that I assumed people would know to do, and it's not always the case. So it helped me to streamline my process by being a guest on other people's shows. So that would be the final thing that I would recommend. So if you take my lessons learned and take those as advice for you, if you are considering starting your own podcast, those are the things the top 10 that came to mind for me in terms of what I've learned and what I would tell other people to kind of shorten your learning curve. And obviously, if you want to take a whole course on it, you can hop on over to Jenna Kutcher's The Podcast Lab and learn all the details there. She does give some recommendations on equipment to get started and which hostings, platforms to consider, and certainly gave a lot of background, in-depth information. And I didn't actually have that on my list, but I will just say there are many, many podcast platforms that you can use to host, to edit, and to ultimately share your distribution of your show. Don't get too mired down in those details either. That whole you can always change your mind, it works for hosting as well. So do a little research. Go with the one that feels like it has the best reviews or is the best fit for you based on your comfort level. And then just know that you can always change your mind and switch things around later if needed. So there you go, my friends. There is my official 100th episode with the 10 things that I have learned by being a podcast host. And I just cannot thank you guys enough for listening and for subscribing. Also for your reviews. Don't forget that really, really important part so that we can continue to grow our audience and get this one out. I will tell you, I did learn reviews are really, really important to grow an audience and to get my podcast to show up on search results. So reviews are helpful, and I thank you in advance for sending them my way. I am so excited to see where this show is going in the next season. I have not yet decided on my theme, so stay tuned. But I've got lots of really incredible people coming to you every Thursday from now through the summer. And then at some point, late summer, early fall, we will jump into season 4 and we'll see where it takes us. So thanks again, friends, for listening and telling your friends. Have a great week. Well, hey, thanks for listening today. And thank you for your reviews. They mean so much to me and they help this podcast grow. I just love reading them. So if you haven't left one yet, please do. Now, listener, are you having your own start again moment? Your path to thriving after divorce is here. The future may be uncertain, but there is hope. We know that losing your identity as a wife can be disheartening, and the grief that follows is humbling. In fact, it can feel crippling. But if you are ready to get back on your feet, download my Start Again guide to get you pointed in the right direction. You can find it at SimplyShaunna.com/startagain.